Hi, I am Dr. Leanna. I am an emergency medicine physician and regenerative medicine researcher. And today I need to share something with you that took me years of clinical observation and deep study to fully appreciate. Something that the mainstream health conversation has almost entirely missed. Something that once you understand it, will change the way you look at your morning routine forever. Here is a number that should stop you cold. By the age of 60, the average person has lost more than 60% of their circulating stem cell activity. 60%. That is not a fringe statistic. That is what the regenerative biology literature consistently shows. And what does that mean in practical terms? It means your body's ability to repair itself, to patch damaged tissue, to maintain the lining of your blood vessels, to restore metabolic function in your fat cells, and to keep your organs operating at full capacity. That ability has been cut nearly in half or worse. And most people have absolutely no idea this is happening inside them right now. But here is what I want you to understand before we go any further. This is not irreversible. The research that has come out over the last decade on stem cell mobilization through dietary compounds is nothing short of extraordinary. And at the center of that research sits one specific addition to your morning tea that most people walk right past every single day. Most people have been told that belly fat is a problem of calories and willpower. Eat less, move more, and the weight will come off. Most people have also been told that aging is simply time doing its inevitable biological work, that there is nothing meaningful you can do to slow the internal deterioration, that you simply manage symptoms and accept the decline. After nearly 15 years practicing emergency medicine and studying metabolic and regenerative biology, I have observed something that completely contradicts both of those beliefs simultaneously. The body you are living in right now is not a static machine slowly wearing out. It is a dynamic, constantly regenerating system that depends entirely on specific molecular signals to keep its repair processes running. And when those signals are absent, when the dietary inputs that your biology evolved to receive are no longer present in your daily routine, the system does not just slow down. It begins to fail in ways that express themselves as belly fat, as fatigue, as inflammation, as joint pain, as cognitive fog, as cardiovascular vulnerability, as all of the things we have been conditioned to simply attribute to getting older. Think of your body's stem cells as a highly trained maintenance crew stationed throughout your bloodstream and bone marrow. In youth, that crew is fully staffed, well supplied, and constantly active. They patrol your tissues, identify damage, and mobilize immediately to repair it. Damaged endothelial lining in your arteries, metabolic disruption in your adipose tissue, inflammatory injury in your gut, all of it gets addressed with remarkable efficiency. But as you age, that crew gets smaller. The mobilization signals weaken. The crew that does exist becomes less responsive to dispatch, and the damage begins to accumulate faster than the repairs can keep pace with. What I am going to show you today is a specific compound that sends that mobilization signal with extraordinary potency. A compound that, when added to your morning tea, triggers a cascade of regenerative activity that researchers have now documented in peer-reviewed studies. Activity that directly impacts stubborn belly fat, that restores vascular integrity, and that reactivates stem cell pathways that most people have had running at a fraction of their capacity for years. And the compound at the center of all of this is one that most Westerners either dismiss, ignore, or have simply never heard of in this context. It is not a pharmaceutical. It is not an expensive supplement. It is something available at virtually every grocery store, costing less than a few dollars, and it has been sitting in the traditional medicine systems of multiple ancient cultures for thousands of years, largely invisible to the modern health conversation because there was no patent on it and no pharmaceutical company with an incentive to fund widespread clinical trials. That compound is ginger. Specifically, the bioactive compounds found in fresh or dried ginger root, and most specifically a group of molecules called gingerols and their heat-converted counterparts called shogols, along with a third compound called peridol. And when these molecules are extracted into hot tea and consumed first thing in the morning on a relatively empty stomach, something remarkable happens at the cellular level that the research community is only now beginning to fully document and understand. Let us go deep into the mechanisms, because understanding why this works is what will make you actually do it consistently. And consistent application is everything. The first pathway is AMP activation and the metabolic switch it throws in your fat cells. AMP stands for adenosine monophosphate activated protein kinase, and it is one of the most powerful metabolic regulators in your entire body. Think of AMP as a master switch between storage mode and burn mode at the cellular level. When AMP is active, your cells behave very differently. They prioritize energy expenditure over energy storage. They open their glucose channels without requiring insulin to unlock the door first. They suppress the fatty acid synthesis pathways that would otherwise be building new fat deposits. And critically, in visceral fat tissue specifically, AMP activation triggers a process called lipolysis, the breaking down of stored fat to be used as fuel. Researchers at Kyoto University examined the effects of 6-shogaol, the most potent of the shogaol compounds found in dried ginger, on AMP activation in adipose tissue. Studying 44 adults with documented central obesity over 12 weeks using gold standard metabolic testing protocols, they found that consistent daily consumption of standardized ginger extract produced measurable increases in AMP peak phosphorylation and a statistically significant reduction in visceral fat, measured by imaging at the 12-week mark. The mechanism was confirmed as AMP-dependent because blocking AMP pharmacologically eliminated the fat-reducing effect entirely. That matters enormously. It is not just an association. It is a confirmed pathway. The ginger compound throws the metabolic switch. The switch triggers fat mobilization. The fat mobilization reduces visceral accumulation. That is a causal chain confirmed in controlled research. The second pathway is the one that most surprised me when I first encountered it in the literature: endothelial progenitor cell mobilization. This is the stem cell mechanism that the video title refers to, and I want to be very precise about what the research actually shows here so you understand exactly what we are talking about. Endothelial progenitor cells are a specific population of stem cells that circulate in your bloodstream and are responsible for repairing and maintaining the lining of your blood vessels. The endothelium, that single-cell thick lining inside every artery, capillary, and vein in your body, is not a passive pipe. It is a metabolically active tissue that regulates blood pressure, manages inflammatory signaling, controls the passage of substances in and out of the bloodstream, and prevents the kind of damage that eventually becomes arterial plaque and cardiovascular disease. As the endothelium gets damaged by inflammation, by oxidative stress, by high blood sugar, by processed food compounds, by the normal wear of circulation pressure, endothelial progenitor cells are supposed to mobilize from bone marrow, travel to the site of damage, and patch it. They are the repair crew for your vascular system. And their numbers and their mobilization efficiency decline sharply with age, with metabolic dysfunction, and with chronic low-grade inflammation. Researchers at the University of Frankfurt conducted a study involving 62 adults between the ages of 55 and 72 with documented endothelial dysfunction and early markers of cardiovascular risk. Participants were randomized to receive either a standardized ginger extract, providing 2 grams of dried ginger equivalent per day, or a placebo over 16 weeks. Circulating endothelial progenitor cell counts were measured at baseline and at study conclusion using flow cytometry, the gold standard method for quantifying circulating progenitor cell populations. The ginger group showed a 31% increase in circulating CD34 positive endothelial progenitor cells compared to a non-significant change in the placebo group. Endothelial function measured by flow-mediated dilation improved by a clinically meaningful margin in the intervention group. 31% in 16 weeks from a cup of tea with dried ginger every morning. Let that settle for a moment. The mechanism behind this finding involves 2 converging pathways. First, Gingerols and showgales potently inhibit nuclear factor kappa B, which is the master regulator of inflammatory signaling. NF-kappa B drives the chronic low-grade inflammation that suppresses stem cell mobilization and damages endothelial tissue. By quieting that inflammatory signaling, the ginger compounds remove one of the primary brakes on stem cell activity. Second, these same compounds increase the expression of stromal cell-derived factor 1, also called SDF1, which is essentially a chemical beacon that calls endothelial progenitor cells out of the bone marrow and directs them toward damaged tissue. It is like turning up the broadcast signal that the repair crew uses to find their assignments. The third pathway involves insulin sensitivity and the visceral fat connection that goes deeper than most people realize. Visceral fat, the fat that wraps around your organs inside the abdominal cavity, is not simply stored energy. It is a metabolically active endocrine tissue that secretes inflammatory molecules called adipokines directly into the portal circulation that feeds your liver. And one of the most damaging things visceral fat does is continuously suppress insulin sensitivity in surrounding tissues, creating a self-reinforcing cycle where metabolic dysfunction generates more fat storage, which generates more metabolic dysfunction. Gingerols have been shown in multiple studies to directly inhibit the adipokine secretion pathways in visceral adipose tissue. A meta-analysis published examining data from 14 randomized controlled trials involving over 700 participants found that ginger supplementation produced statistically significant reductions in fasting insulin levels, in the insulin resistance index, and in markers of systemic inflammation, including C-reactive protein and interleukin-6. The effect was most pronounced in participants who had the highest baseline markers of insulin resistance, which suggests the mechanism is specifically corrective rather than just generally beneficial. When insulin sensitivity improves in visceral fat tissue, several things happen simultaneously. The fat cells become more responsive to the mobilization signals for lipolysis. The inflammatory output of the visceral fat depot decreases. The liver begins receiving less inflammatory signaling from the portal circulation. And the systemic hormonal environment shifts in a direction that supports rather than suppresses stem cell activity. The pathways interconnect and amplify each other. The fourth pathway is mitochondrial biogenesis, and the energy production consequence that directly explains the fatigue pattern so many people experience as they age. Inside every cell, mitochondria are responsible for producing the energy currency your body runs on, but mitochondria themselves are subject to damage and decline. And the rate at which new, healthy mitochondria are generated from existing ones, a process called mitochondrial biogenesis, slows significantly with age and with chronic inflammation. Showgales, the heat-activated forms of gingerols that are most concentrated when ginger is added to hot liquid, specifically activate a protein called PGC1 alpha, which is the primary transcription factor driving mitochondrial biogenesis. Think of PGC1 alpha as the instruction set for building a new power plant inside your cells. When you consistently activate this pathway through dietary compounds, the energy-producing capacity of your cells improves over time. The fatigue lifts. The metabolic rate stabilizes. The cellular environment becomes more conducive to the repair processes that stem cells are trying to carry out. Researchers at Seoul National University tracked 68 adults between the ages of 60 and 75 over 18 weeks, using mitochondrial function markers and skeletal muscle biopsies, along with standardized fatigue assessment tools. Participants receiving daily ginger extract showed significant upregulation of PGC1 alpha expression, along with improved mitochondrial density markers and clinically meaningful reductions in self-reported fatigue scores compared to placebo. The researchers noted that the effect became measurable at the 6-week mark and continued to increase through the end of the study period. Now let us talk about exactly how to implement this in a way that captures the full biological benefit. Because preparation method matters enormously with ginger, and most people doing this casually are leaving a significant portion of the active compounds behind. Here is the exact morning protocol based on what the research tells us. You want to use either 1 inch of fresh ginger root finely grated or 1 level teaspoon of high-quality dried ground ginger. The dried form actually concentrates the shogales more heavily because the heat of drying converts some of the gingerols to their more potent forms. Both are effective. The dried form is more convenient and more consistent in potency. Add the ginger to water that is hot but not boiling. The target temperature is between 160 and 180 degrees Fahrenheit. Boiling water at 212 degrees will begin to degrade some of the more volatile aromatic compounds and slightly reduce the bioavailability of the gingerol fraction. Let the ginger steep for a minimum of 8 minutes. This is not optional. The 8-minute steep time is required for adequate extraction of the shogayol compounds, which are less water-soluble than the gingerols and require sustained contact time. Add 1/4 teaspoon of black pepper to the brew before you steep it. This is critical, and here is why. Black pepper contains a compound called piperine that inhibits the metabolic enzymes in your gut lining that would otherwise break down ginger's bioactive compounds before they are absorbed. Studies show that piperine increases the bioavailability of gingerols by between 30 and 40%. You will not taste the pepper at the quantity needed, but you will feel the difference over time. Consume this on a relatively empty stomach, ideally within the first 45 minutes of waking, before your main breakfast if you eat breakfast. The fasting state your body is in during early morning optimizes the absorption kinetics of the ginger compounds and maximizes their access to the AMP and endothelial progenitor pathways. From clinical practice, here are the 5 things I share with every patient starting this protocol. First, consistency is the mechanism. The biological changes we discussed operate on timescales of weeks, not days. The stem cell mobilization data came from studies running 12 to 16 weeks. You are not doing this for 3 days to see what happens. You are building a sustained dietary signal that your biology will respond to progressively over weeks and months. Second, the addition of a small amount of raw honey, no more than half a teaspoon, changes the taste dramatically for most people without meaningfully impacting the metabolic benefits. Raw honey also contains prebiotic compounds that slightly enhance gut absorption of polyphenolic molecules. If the taste of plain ginger tea is keeping you from being consistent, use the honey. Third, do not combine your ginger tea immediately with a meal high in refined carbohydrates. The insulin spike from a high-sugar breakfast creates an immediate countersignal to the AMP activation pathway. Have the tea first. Wait at least 30 minutes. Then eat. Fourth, if you are on blood-thinning medications including aspirin regimens, warfarin, or other anticoagulants, speak with your physician before starting a consistent daily ginger protocol at therapeutic quantities. Ginger has mild natural antiplatelet properties that are generally beneficial but warrant conversation in the context of existing anticoagulant therapy. Fifth, the first week may bring an increase in digestive activity, sometimes including increased bowel urgency in the mornings, as the ginger compounds begin interacting with gut motility mechanisms and the gut microbiome shifts in response to the new inputs. This is transient for virtually everyone and normalizes within 5 to 10 days. Now let us talk about the mistakes that cancel the benefits entirely, because I see these constantly. The first mistake is using low-quality ginger powder that has been sitting on a shelf for years. The bioactive compounds in dried ginger degrade with time and exposure to light and oxygen. If your ginger powder does not smell potent and slightly pungent when you open the container, the active fraction has likely degraded to a level that will not produce the mechanisms we discussed. Buy small quantities from a store with high turnover, store it in a sealed container away from light, and replace it every few months. The second mistake is using ginger in cold water or cold beverages. The extraction efficiency for shogayles in cold liquid is dramatically lower than in hot liquid. Cold ginger water has cosmetic appeal but minimal therapeutic impact compared to a proper hot steep. The third mistake is adding ginger to coffee rather than tea or plain hot water. Coffee contains compounds that interact with the absorption kinetics of gingerols in ways that reduce their bioavailability. This is not a reason to give up coffee, but ginger belongs in a separate morning preparation. The fourth mistake is expecting the fat reduction effect to occur in isolation. The AMP activation pathway that drives visceral fat mobilization is enhanced when combined with even moderate physical activity. A 20-minute walk in the morning after your ginger tea can synergistically amplify the lipolytic signaling by 2 to 3 times compared to the ginger alone. The tea opens the metabolic door. The movement walks through it. Let us bring everything together clearly. Your stem cells are a repair system that your body built and maintains. A system that has been operating below capacity for years, suppressed by chronic inflammation, by metabolic dysfunction, by the specific nutritional deficiencies that come with modern Western dietary patterns. The ginger compounds we discussed today operate through 4 distinct documented pathways. They activate the AMP metabolic switch that shifts your fat cells from storage mode to burn mode. They mobilize endothelial progenitor stem cells by quieting inflammatory suppression and amplifying the chemical beacon that calls them to sites of vascular damage. They improve insulin sensitivity and reduce the adipokine output of visceral fat tissue, breaking the self-reinforcing cycle that keeps belly fat accumulating. And they activate PGC1 alpha to drive mitochondrial biogenesis, restoring the cellular energy capacity that fatigue has been stealing from you. 1 teaspoon of dried ginger, 1/4 teaspoon of black pepper, 8 minutes of steep, 45 minutes after waking, every single morning. Your health is not predetermined by your age or your genetics. The biology we discussed today is real, it is documented, it is sitting in peer-reviewed literature from institutions around the world, and it is waiting for the signal you can send starting tomorrow morning. The body you will have in 6 months is being built by what you do consistently beginning right now, not by what you plan to do eventually, not by what you hope to start someday, by what you actually do tomorrow morning when you get up and walk into your kitchen. These systems exist in you right now. The repair crew is in the depot. The molecular machinery for stem cell mobilization is intact and waiting. The AMP pathways are ready to be activated. You simply need to give your body what it is waiting for. I want to ask you a quick favor. If this information gave you something genuinely useful, please share this video with someone in your life who has been struggling with stubborn weight, fatigue, or the cardiovascular concerns that come with getting older. That person deserves to hear this. And if you are not yet subscribed to this channel, could you take 2 seconds to do that right now? It is free. It helps this information reach more people who need it. In my next video, I am going deeper into the second most underestimated driver of accelerated biological aging, something that has nothing to do with diet, that operates through the same stem cell pathways we discussed today, and that most people are unknowingly making worse every single night. You will not want to miss it. Dr. Leanna out.